This is If I Should Fall from Grace with God by the Pogues. Let's talk records. It is 1957 in Kent, England. Shane MacGowan was born on Christmas Day while his Irish parents were visiting relatives. He lived in Ireland when he was a child, but later moved to England with his family, living in various places including London. He started reading voraciously at a young age, reading Dostoevsky and James Joyce at the age of 12. He also began drinking around this time. When he was 17, he was committed to a psychiatric hospital and was diagnosed with acute situational anxiety. In the mid-70s, MacGowan became part of the growing punk rock movement in London and went by the name Shane O'Hooligan. He started a band called the Nipple Erectors, later to be known as the Nips. In the late 70s, MacGowan met Peter Spider Stacy at a Ramones show in London. They started a side project called the Millwall Chainsaws, with MacGowan singing, Stacy playing the tin whistle, and another person that MacGowan had recently met, Jem Finer, playing the banjo. In 1980, the Nips broke up, so MacGowan started putting all his energy on the Millwall Chainsaws, who changed their name to the New Republicans. Nips guitarist James Fearley joined in 1982 playing the accordion. They became Pogue Mahone, which means kiss my arse in Gaelic. They got the name from a line from James Joyce Ulysses. Kate O'Riordan joined on bass and Andrew Rankin on drums. The concept of the band was to mix Irish traditional music with punk rock. Pogue Mahone began playing clubs around town and self-released Dark Streets of London in 1984. They started gaining a following for their exciting live shows, and their music began getting airplay on BBC One. Due to complaints from listeners that spoke Scottish Gaelic, they shortened their name to the Pogues. They signed with Stiff Records and released their debut album Red Roses for Me later that same year. For their next album, they collaborated with Elvis Costello as producer and released Rum, Sodomy and Lash in 1985. The record received great reviews and it reached number 13 on the UK albums chart. It was around this time that the band began to conceive a different type of Christmas song. It's disputed as to who exactly came up with the idea. It was either a wager between Costello and MacGowan that MacGowan could not write a Christmas hit song. Pogues manager Frank Murray, however, went on to say that it was his idea. First, they released the EP Poetry in Motion in 1986, which reached number 29 in the UK. The EP was the first to feature new guitarist Philip Chevron and Terry Woods playing the mandolin. Finer began writing the song about an Irish sailor in New York longing to be back on his Irish home in County Clare. His wife, however, persuaded him to write a different kind of song, maybe like a dialogue between man and woman. He then began composing the structure of what would be their holiday song. The song was titled Fairy Tale in New York by MacGowan, after a book by J.P. Donlevy from 1973 that Finer was reading at the time. MacGowan wrote his part in bed, stricken with double pneumonia in Sweden. The song was about two Irish immigrants in New York, with MacGowan singing the male part and O'Riordan singing the female part. Costello suggested that the song should be called Christmas Eve in the Drunk Tank, but the band protested, thinking that it would not get any airplay. Once they started recording, however, something about the song was just not working out. After this, tensions with the band and Costello started to escalate when him and bass player O'Riordan began dating. Around the same time, there were issues with Stiff Records' finances that impeded the band from recording. O'Riordan left the band to marry Costello, and they were left without a bass player and a female singing part for their holiday song. By early 1987, the issues with Stiff were settled. Once they were ready to continue recording, they got producer Steve Lillywhite, who had worked with U2, to take the helm. They tried putting the song together again, but it was just still not working out. Lillywhite took the tapes home and had his wife at the time, Kirsty McCall, lay down a guide vocal track for the song. When Lillywhite brought the recording back to the studio the next day, the band was in complete awe at McCall's take on her singing part, and they thought it was perfect. The song was released on November 23rd, 1987. The music video for Fairy Tale of New York was directed by Peter Doherty, who was the creator of Yo MTV Raps. Actor Matt Dillon makes a cameo. The single was a big success, reaching number 2 on the UK singles chart. It has re-entered the charts since then, practically every year around holiday season. The band recorded the rest of the songs that would be on their next album at Rack Studios in London for most of 1987. If I Should Fall from Grace with God by the Pogues was released January 18th, 1988 on their own label, Pogue Mahone, through Warner Music Group in the UK and the rest of Europe and Island Records in the US. This is the European album cover, and this is the American cover. The next single was the title track, released February 22nd, 1988. A slower recording version of the song was featured on the soundtrack for the cult movie Straight to Hell in 1987, which featured Joe Strummer and also featured the Pogues. The song reached number 58 on the UK singles chart. The third and final single was Fiesta, released July 4th, 1988. The song was inspired by a traditional Spanish fairground melody. They were inspired when they were in Almeria, a city in Spain that they also talk about in the song. The music video was directed by Adrian Edmondson, a British comedian famous for Young Ones and Bottom. It was filmed in Barcelona on the roof of a building called Casa Pablo. The song reached number 24 on the UK singles chart. The album also included the rendition of sea shanty and folk song South Australia, which is an old work song sung by traders working clipper ships in ports. It also includes Streets of Sorrow, Birmingham 6, that tackles the controversial subject in protest for the Birmingham 6 that were wrongly accused of terrorism. If I Should Fall from Grace with God by the Pogues was a big success, reaching number 2 on the UK albums chart and going gold. If you're a record collector like me, If I Should Fall from Grace with God by the Pogues is a grand record to have in your record collection.